You know, when we talk about UFOs, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably grainy photos, right? Maybe some shaky videos? But what if the real story wasn't about that at all? What if it was about official reports from generals, fighter pilots, and air traffic controllers? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and look at the credible evidence that has officials all over the world taking a serious second look at what's in our skies. I love this quote. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. For decades, let's be honest, the whole idea of UFOs has been pretty firmly stuck in those first two stages. But a growing pile of really credible evidence is forcing a serious question on us. Are we maybe on the verge of accepting a new self-evident truth? So where do we start our investigation? Well, not with a shaky video, but with something much more solid. A formal, 90-page analysis from some of France's highest-ranking military and scientific minds. Okay, let's go back to 1999. In France, a group of some very serious people, we're talking 13 retired French generals, top-tier scientists, and space experts, they released this document. It became known as the Cometa Report, and they had spent 3 whole years digging into military and pilot encounters. And let's just say, what they found was anything but ordinary. The report's conclusions were, well, staggering. They weren't ambiguous at all. They stated that these objects are a real, physical phenomenon happening all over the world, that they seem to be intelligently controlled, that they can move in ways that are totally beyond our technology and, frankly, defy our known laws of physics. And their final warning? This is a potential national security threat, and the world needs to start treating it like a critical issue. Now, reports like Cometa are pretty rare. So if we're going to have a serious conversation about this, the first thing we have to do is filter out the overwhelming amount of noise to find that credible signal. The reality is, something like 95% of all sightings, they eventually get identified. They turn out to be weather balloons, satellites, sometimes even just the planet Venus. But our focus today, the whole point of this, is that stubborn little 5%. That small, well-documented fraction that remains totally unexplained even after a ton of investigation. And to focus on data, not all the drama, experts have started using a new term, UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. Now, this isn't just about changing a word. It's a very deliberate move to strip away all the cultural baggage that comes with UFO and just enable a purely scientific look at the problem. So, where does the most reliable data actually come from? Well, how about from trained observers whose lives and careers literally depend on knowing exactly what's in the sky with them? I'm talking about military and commercial pilots. Take Captain Phil Schultz. This guy was a veteran U.S. Navy fighter pilot. After near miss with a huge metallic object, an incident where he and his co-pilot braced for impact, his conclusion was immediate and totally unwavering. And believe me, he is just one of hundreds of professional aviators who have risked their careers to come forward. And look, this is just a tiny sample. A disc just hovering over Chicago's O'Hare Airport seen by a dozen different airline employees. Giant silent triangles tracked by F-16s over Belgium. A Japanese 747 cargo crew being shadowed by an object the size of an aircraft carrier, which was confirmed on multiple radar systems. These aren't just stories. They are documented events with multiple expert witnesses. 20. I want you to remember that number. Back in March of 1967, at 2 separate U.S. Air Force bases, a total of 20 nuclear missiles suddenly went offline. They just became unlaunchable. And according to the officers who were on duty, this happened at the exact same moment that unidentified objects were seen hovering directly over their missile silos. Now, you hear about incidents like nuclear missiles being shut down, and you'd think there would be an urgent, transparent investigation, right? Instead, what the historical record shows is something else entirely, a deep, baffling wall of silence. You start to see a very clear pattern emerge. You have multiple, highly trained pilots all reporting the same object. Well, it's dismissed as a weather phenomenon. You get confirmed radar hits from the ground and the air. Oh, must be a radar malfunction. Time and time again, strong, multi-source evidence is met with these dismissive, totally inadequate official explanations. And this right here? This just says it all. When United Airlines staff called the tower about that disc hovering over Gate C-17 at O'Hare, this was the FAA operator's actual response. It perfectly captures the culture of ridicule that prevents any serious investigation and, maybe more importantly, discourages pilots from reporting what could be serious aviation hazards. So this brings us right to the central puzzle, doesn't it? Why is the testimony of our most trained observers, often backed up by sensor data, met with this kind of systemic dismissal? It really points to a powerful taboo and institutional resistance to even taking this phenomenon seriously. So, look, this whole thing isn't about demanding belief in extraterrestrials. Not at all. It's really about making a case for curiosity, for just acknowledging that there's a persistent mystery here, and that it's finally time we apply some rigorous scientific inquiry to find some answers. And the path forward that experts propose isn't some radical idea. It's a really rational four-step process. First, end the stigma. Simple. Create a safe way for pilots and military folks to report what they see without fearing for their careers. Second, set up a public agency to actually investigate this stuff, kind of like what France has had for decades. Third, apply real scientific resources to it. And finally, and maybe most importantly, share the findings openly. Build some trust and advance our collective understanding. The data is clear. Something unusual is operating in our airspace, and it's doing so with complete impunity. The shift from ridicule to simple curiosity is way overdue. Because you know what? The biggest mystery may not even be what's up there, but why we've been so determined for so long not to look. Thanks for joining us.